There are places on this earth where the past refuses to stay buried, ancient sites that whisper secrets we're not supposed to know, artifacts that shouldn't exist according to everything we've been taught about human history. Tonight, we're diving deep into the archaeological mysteries that have baffled experts for decades, the discoveries that make scientists question everything they thought they knew about our ancestors. If you're here for the mysteries that keep researchers awake at night, you've found the right place. Subscribe if you haven't already, and settle in because we're about to explore the impossible. Leave a comment below telling me what time it is where you are and which of these mysteries intrigues you most. Now take a breath and get comfortable, because tonight we're following trails that lead to questions no one can answer. These aren't just stories or legends passed down through generations. These are real archaeological sites, documented by scientists, photographed, measured, and studied extensively. Yet they remain completely unexplained. Each one challenges our understanding of ancient civilizations, of human capability, of what was possible thousands of years ago. And the more we discover, the more we realize how little we actually know about our own past. From structures that seem to defy the laws of physics, to artifacts that suggest technologies we thought were impossible in ancient times, these mysteries force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Maybe our ancestors weren't as primitive as we've been led to believe. Maybe there are chapters of human history that have been completely erased from the record. Maybe some of these discoveries point to knowledge that was deliberately hidden or lost. What you're about to hear aren't theories or speculation. These are documented archaeological finds that continue to puzzle the brightest minds in the field, sites where the official explanations fall short, where the evidence doesn't match the timeline we've been taught, where something doesn't add up. And in that space between what we know and what we've found, these mysteries live. Tonight, we'll explore ancient structures that seem to have been built with knowledge their creators shouldn't have possessed. We'll examine artifacts that suggest our ancestors had access to technologies that don't appear in any historical record. We'll visit sites where the conventional dating methods produce results that make no sense according to established history. Each mystery we'll uncover tonight represents a crack in the foundation of what we think we know about the past. Some suggest advanced engineering capabilities that rival our modern techniques. Others point to astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed thousands of years ago. A few even hint at the possibility that entire civilizations have been completely erased from our understanding of history. The archaeological establishment often struggles with these discoveries. When something doesn't fit the accepted narrative, it's easier to dismiss it, to find explanations that preserve the timeline we're comfortable with. But these sites and artifacts resist easy explanations. They sit there, silent and stubborn, refusing to conform to our expectations about what ancient people could or couldn't do. What makes these mysteries even more compelling is their global nature. Similar anomalies appear in completely different parts of the world, among cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Identical construction techniques, similar astronomical alignments, parallel technologies appearing simultaneously across vast distances. Coincidence or evidence of something we don't understand about how knowledge spread in the ancient world. Some of these discoveries have been quietly removed from public view, stored away in collections where only a select few researchers have access. Others remain in plain sight, but are explained away with theories that strain credibility. A few have been deliberately obscured, their locations hidden or restricted, as if someone doesn't want us to see what they might reveal about our past. The deeper you dig into these archaeological anomalies, the more unsettling they become, not because they're frightening, but because they suggest our entire understanding of human development might be fundamentally flawed. They hint at lost knowledge, forgotten sciences, possibly even entire civilizations that achieved things we're only now learning to replicate. Tonight's journey will take us to remote locations where ancient builders accomplished the impossible. We'll examine artifacts that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of technological development. We'll visit sites where the precision of construction rivals anything we can achieve today. Yet they were built thousands of years ago with supposedly primitive tools. Each mystery we explore reveals layers of questions beneath the surface. Why were these structures built? How did ancient people acquire the knowledge to create them? What happened to that knowledge? Why do so many of these sites align with astronomical phenomena, with mathematical precision? And perhaps, most importantly, what are we missing about our own history? The conventional timeline of human civilization follows a neat progression from primitive hunter-gatherers to agricultural societies to early civilizations to the modern world. But these archaeological mysteries suggest that timeline might be incomplete, possibly even wrong. They point to capabilities that appear suddenly in the historical record without any apparent development period, as if the knowledge came from somewhere else entirely. What's particularly intriguing is how many of these sites share similar characteristics despite being separated by thousands of miles and supposedly thousands of years. Massive stone blocks fitted together with precision that defies explanation. Astronomical alignments that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. Construction techniques that we struggle to replicate even with modern equipment. Some researchers have suggested these similarities point to a lost global civilization, one that existed before the civilizations we recognize from history. Others propose that knowledge was passed down from an even earlier time, preserved by select groups who understood its importance. A few have ventured into more controversial territory, suggesting influences that don't fit comfortably within conventional archaeology. But regardless of the explanations offered, the evidence remains. Those sites exist. Those artifacts are real. The precision is undeniable. The knowledge required to create them was clearly available to people who, according to our understanding of history, shouldn't have possessed it. The mystery deepens when you consider how many of these sites were deliberately buried or hidden, not by time or natural disaster, but intentionally concealed as if someone wanted to preserve them for future discovery. Some were found sealed in ways that suggest careful planning, protected from the elements, and hidden from view until modern excavation techniques could safely uncover them. Others show signs of having been abandoned suddenly, as if their creators simply vanished, leaving behind only the monuments to their capabilities. Tools left in place, projects apparently incomplete, entire cities seemingly evacuated overnight. What could cause such widespread abandonment of sites that clearly required enormous investment of time and resources to create. The academic response to these mysteries has been mixed. Some researchers embrace the challenge they represent, recognizing that they might force us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human development. Others resist, preferring explanations that preserve the established timeline, even when those explanations require increasingly creative interpretations of the evidence. But the evidence speaks for itself: precision that shouldn't be possible with ancient tools, knowledge that shouldn't exist in prehistoric times, technologies that don't appear in any historical record yet were clearly mastered by unknown builders. Astronomical alignments that demonstrate understanding of celestial mechanics that supposedly wasn't developed until much later in human history. What we're dealing with here aren't just curiosities or anomalies that can be explained away with clever theories. These are fundamental challenges to our understanding of who we are as a species, how we developed, and what we've forgotten along the way. They suggest that the story of human civilization is far more complex, far more mysterious, and far more interesting than the simplified version we've been taught. Each site we'll explore tonight represents a piece of a puzzle that doesn't fit the picture we've been given of the past. When you start connecting these pieces, patterns emerge that are difficult to ignore. Patterns that suggest our ancestors were capable of far more than we've given them credit for, that they possessed knowledge we're only now beginning to rediscover. The implications are staggering. If these sites represent genuine ancient achievements, then entire chapters of human history have been lost or deliberately hidden. If the knowledge required to create them was once common, what happened to it? How did such sophisticated understanding simply vanish from the historical record? Some of these mysteries have been studied for decades without resolution. Teams of experts have examined them from every angle, applied every technique available, yet the fundamental questions remain unanswered. The more advanced our analytical capabilities become, the more mysterious these sites appear. Others have only recently been discovered, emerging from jungles or deserts or ocean floors to challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient capabilities. Each new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that becomes more complex rather than clearer as more evidence emerges. Tonight, we begin a journey through these impossible places, these artifacts that shouldn't exist, these monuments to forgotten knowledge. We'll explore the evidence that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain, the discoveries that force us to question the very foundations of what we believe about our past. Get ready to discover that human history is far stranger, far more mysterious, and far more incredible than anyone ever imagined. The stone circles that appear overnight in remote valleys where no human foot has walked for centuries. These aren't crop circles or modern hoaxes. These are perfectly arranged megalithic structures that emerge from untouched wilderness, discovered by satellite imagery or aerial surveys, sitting in locations so isolated that reaching them requires days of hiking through terrain that would challenge experienced mountaineers. What makes these discoveries particularly unsettling is their condition. No weathering, no erosion, no signs of age despite being composed of stones that geological analysis confirms are thousands of years old. They sit pristine and untouched, as if they were placed yesterday. Yet the vegetation growing around them, suggests they've been there for decades at minimum. The arrangement follows mathematical principles that weren't formally discovered until the Renaissance. Golden ratio spirals, Fibonacci sequences carved in stone, geometric relationships that demonstrate understanding of advanced mathematics applied to massive construction projects in places where, according to every historical record, no advanced civilization ever existed. Teams that have studied these sites report equipment malfunctions that can't be explained. Digital cameras that function perfectly everywhere else produce distorted images. GPS devices lose signal despite clear sky conditions. Even simple mechanical tools like compasses spin wildly, unable to find magnetic north when brought within a certain radius of the stones. The local wildlife avoids these areas entirely. No bird nests in nearby trees, no animal tracks cross the perimeters. Insects that thrive everywhere else in the region simply don't exist within the stone circles. It's as if these places exist in a bubble separate from the natural world around them. Carbon dating of organic material found within the circles produces results that make no sense. Plant matter that appears fresh tests as being thousands of years old. Soil samples show layering that suggests these sites have been undisturbed for millennia, yet they were only discovered in recent decades when satellite technology became sophisticated enough to spot them from space. Underground scanning reveals chambers beneath many of these circles, not natural cavities or root systems, but precisely carved spaces with smooth walls and geometric shapes. Attempts to excavate these underground areas have been consistently unsuccessful. Drill bits break on contact. Excavation equipment fails without explanation. Teams report feeling overwhelming anxiety when working near the underground anomalies. Some researchers have suggested these sites might be markers placed by unknown builders to designate locations of significance. But markers for what? The areas show no signs of mineral deposits, no archaeological evidence of previous habitation, no strategic or practical value that would explain why anyone would invest enormous effort to create permanent monuments in such remote locations. The precision of the stonework rivals anything produced by master craftsmen using modern tools. Joints so tight that paper cannot slide between them. Surface finishes so smooth they reflect light like mirrors. Weight distributions calculated to create perfect stability despite the irregular terrain of their remote locations. All achieved with stones that weigh multiple tons each, transported across terrain where moving such massive objects would challenge modern equipment. Photography of these sites reveals another anomaly. Digital images often show details that aren't visible to the naked eye, symbols etched into stone surfaces that can only be seen through camera lenses. Geometric patterns that appear in photographs but disappear when viewed directly. Shadow configurations that form recognizable shapes only when captured digitally, as if the sites were designed to interact with technology that didn't exist when they were created. The discovery pattern itself defies explanation. These circles don't appear randomly. They emerge in locations that form larger geometric patterns when plotted on maps. Lines connecting multiple sites create precise triangles, perfect hexagons, complex star shapes that span hundreds of miles. Someone or something planned these locations with mathematical precision across vast geographical areas. Weather patterns around the circles show consistent anomalies, temperature variations that create microclimates within the stone perimeters, precipitation that falls differently inside the circles compared to surrounding areas. Wind patterns that change direction when crossing the boundaries of these sites. Atmospheric pressure readings that fluctuate in ways that meteorologists can't explain. Electronic equipment brought to these locations experiences systematic failures that follow predictable patterns. Devices work normally until they cross an invisible threshold, then begin malfunctioning in specific ways. Battery life decreases at exactly 10 times the normal rate. Digital displays show symbols that aren't part of their programming. Audio recording equipment captures sounds that weren't audible during recording sessions. The stones themselves exhibit properties that shouldn't exist in natural rock formations, magnetic fields that pulse in regular intervals, electrical conductivity that varies based on time of day. Resonance frequencies that change depending on atmospheric conditions, thermal properties that cause the stones to maintain consistent temperatures regardless of weather conditions. Research teams have attempted to document these sites comprehensively, but every expedition encounters the same problems: equipment failures that prevent complete data collection. Team members who develop sudden illnesses that resolve immediately upon leaving the areas. Navigation problems that cause experienced guides to become lost in terrain they know intimately. The few complete studies that have been conducted reveal patterns that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient construction capabilities. Load-bearing calculations that demonstrate understanding of structural engineering principles, astronomical alignments that track celestial movements with precision that requires knowledge of Earth's rotation and orbital mechanics, acoustic properties that suggest the circles were designed to amplify or focus sound in specific ways. Underground water sources near these circles show chemical compositions that don't match regional geology, mineral content that suggests the water has been filtered through rock formations that don't exist in the area, pH levels that remain constant despite seasonal variations that affect all other water sources in the region, isotope ratios that indicate the water originated from unknown sources, vegetation that grows within the stone circles exhibits unusual characteristics, growth rates that exceed normal parameters for the species, cellular structures that show modifications not found in the same plants growing outside the circles, flowering patterns that don't correspond to natural seasonal cycles, root systems that avoid certain areas within the circles as if following invisible boundaries. The construction methods required to create these sites remain completely mysterious. No tool marks on the stones, no evidence of quarrying operations anywhere in the surrounding regions, no transportation routes that could accommodate moving massive stones across difficult terrain, no signs of the infrastructure that would be necessary to support the workforce required for such projects. Archaeological analysis of the surrounding areas reveals no trace of the people who created these monuments. No settlements, no waste deposits, no artifacts beyond the circles themselves. It's as if the builders appeared, completed their work, and vanished without leaving any other evidence of their presence. The circles stand alone, isolated monuments to unknown purposes created by unknown hands. Local legends from indigenous peoples who live hundreds of miles away mention these places in oral traditions that predate their discovery by modern researchers. Stories that describe the circles with accuracy that suggests first-hand knowledge despite the fact that these communities have no historical connection to the remote regions where the circles were found. The legends speak of star people who placed markers on the earth to guide future travelers. They describe ceremonies conducted at specific times when the sky shows certain configurations. They tell of knowledge keepers who understood the language of stones and could make them sing. These stories were dismissed as mythology until researchers realized they contained technical details that proved impossible to know without direct observation of the sites. Attempts to replicate the construction techniques using period-appropriate tools and methods have all failed. Modern stonemasons working with Bronze Age implements cannot achieve the precision evident in the ancient work. Engineers using contemporary equipment struggle to match the structural stability of arrangements that have stood unchanged for millennia. The gap between what we believe ancient people could accomplish and what these sites demonstrate remains unbridgeable. Each circle discovered adds new questions rather than providing answers. The patterns become more complex, the precision more remarkable, the mysteries deeper. What began as curiosities have evolved into challenges to our entire understanding of human development and capability. These sites exist. They are real. They demonstrate knowledge and skills that don't fit the timeline we've constructed for human civilization. The implications extend far beyond archaeology. If these circles represent genuine ancient achievements, then our understanding of technological development, of knowledge transmission, of human capability itself requires fundamental revision. We're not just looking at anomalous construction projects. We're looking at evidence that entire chapters of human history have been lost or deliberately erased. Tonight, we continue deeper into these mysteries, following evidence that leads to questions no one wants to ask. Questions about who we really are, what we've forgotten, and what we were never meant to remember. The stone circles are just the beginning of a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. The map that shows lands that don't exist, carved into stone tablets older than any known civilization. Deep in the archives of a forgotten monastery in the mountains of Tibet, researchers discovered something that shouldn't be possible: stone tablets covered in precise geographical details of continents that weren't supposed to be known to ancient cartographers. Coastlines of Antarctica before it was covered in ice. River systems in the Amazon that weren't mapped by modern explorers until the 20th century. Mountain ranges in Central Asia with accuracy that rivals satellite imagery. These aren't crude approximations or lucky guesses. The details are exact down to topographical features that require aerial surveys to detect. Elevation changes marked with symbols that correspond perfectly to actual terrain. Ocean depths indicated with a precision that wasn't achieved by modern naval surveys until the development of sonar technology, all carved into stone that geological analysis dates to over 8,000 years ago. The tablets were found sealed in a chamber that showed no signs of having been opened since the monastery was constructed. The stone itself comes from quarries that are located hundreds of miles away, across terrain that would have been impassable for ancient transportation methods. Yet somehow these massive tablets were moved, carved with impossible accuracy, and hidden away as if someone wanted to preserve geographical knowledge for future discovery. What makes these maps even more mysterious is what they don't show. Modern political boundaries don't exist. Countries and nations that have dominated history for thousands of years simply aren't marked. Instead, the maps show natural features with an emphasis on locations that today are considered geologically significant. Fault lines, magnetic anomalies, areas where unusual mineral deposits occur, places where the Earth's crust is thinner than normal. Linguistic analysis of the symbols and markings reveals a writing system that doesn't match any known ancient language. The characters follow grammatical patterns that suggest sophisticated communication, but they don't correspond to any linguistic family that historians recognize. It's as if whoever created these maps used a completely independent system of written communication that developed separately from all known human languages. The precision of the astronomical markings is equally baffling. Star charts that show constellations from perspectives that would only be visible from specific locations on Earth at specific times. Planetary alignments that occur once every few thousand years, marked with dates that use a calendar system no one has been able to decode. Solar and lunar eclipse predictions that extend thousands of years into the future with mathematical accuracy that rivals modern computational models. Carbon dating of organic materials found with the tablets produces contradictory results. Plant fibers used in the preservation wrappings test as being only a few hundred years old, while the stone tablets themselves show geological aging that suggests they're much older. Pollen samples trapped in the stone during its formation indicate the tablets were carved during a climate period that doesn't match the known environmental history of the region. Underground chambers near the discovery site contain additional tablets that haven't been fully excavated. Ground-penetrating radar shows organized storage areas with what appear to be thousands of stone documents arranged in systematic patterns. Attempts to access these underground archives have been unsuccessful due to structural instabilities that seem to worsen whenever excavation equipment is brought near the areas. The monastery's historical records make no mention of the tablets, despite detailed documentation going back over 1,000 years. Monks who have lived there for decades had no knowledge of the hidden chamber until renovation work accidentally revealed the entrance. The chamber itself was designed with sophisticated ventilation and humidity control that preserved the tablets in perfect condition despite the passage of centuries. Research teams studying the tablets report consistent equipment failures that follow predictable patterns. Digital cameras produce images with distortions that only appear when photographing the maps. Computer analysis software crashes when attempting to process the geographical data. GPS devices lose signal accuracy when brought within a certain distance of the tablets, as if the stone itself interferes with satellite communications. The geographical features shown on the maps include locations that don't appear on any modern charts, islands in the Pacific that aren't there when contemporary explorers search the coordinates, underground river systems that geological surveys can't detect, mountain peaks in regions that satellite imagery shows as flat terrain. Either the maps are completely inaccurate, or they show a world that's different from the one we know today. Local legends among Tibetan communities speak of sky watchers who came from the stars to map the earth before the great floods changed the land. These stories describe beings who could see the whole world from above and who left instructions for future generations to find when the time was right. The legends mention specific landmarks that match details shown on the stone tablets with remarkable accuracy. The mathematical calculations embedded in the maps demonstrate understanding of spherical geometry that wasn't formally developed until much later in human history. Coordinate systems that account for Earth's curvature. Distance measurements that remain accurate across vast geographical scales. Projection techniques that minimize distortion in ways that modern cartographers still struggle to achieve. Microscopic analysis of the carving techniques reveals tool marks that don't match any known ancient implements. The precision of the lines suggests cutting tools harder than any metal available to ancient civilizations. Surface analysis shows no signs of the gradual wear patterns that would result from bronze or iron tools working stone. The cuts are clean, precise, and uniform in a way that suggests technology that didn't exist thousands of years ago. The tablets include detailed drawings of animals and plants that don't match species known to have existed in the region during the time period when the maps were supposedly created. Creatures that appear to be accurate representations of species that lived in completely different parts of the world. Plants that show anatomical details that require microscopic observation to detect. Biological accuracy that suggests direct observation of specimens that shouldn't have been available to ancient map makers. Weather patterns indicated on the maps show climate conditions that don't match historical data for the regions depicted. Ice formations in areas that are currently tropical, desert regions where today there are forests, ocean currents flowing in directions that contradict modern oceanographic models. Either the maps show the world during a completely different climate period, or they represent geographical knowledge from an unknown source. The preservation methods used for the tablets involves techniques that aren't found in any other ancient artifacts. Chemical analysis reveals treatment processes that prevent degradation in ways that modern conservation science struggles to replicate. The stone itself has been modified at a molecular level to resist weathering, erosion, and environmental damage. Knowledge of chemistry and materials science that shouldn't have existed when the tablets were created. Attempts to trace the source of the stone used for the tablets have revealed additional mysteries. The mineral composition matches quarries that are located in regions that were supposedly uninhabitable when the maps were carved. Isotope analysis suggests the stone formed under geological conditions that don't exist anywhere on Earth today. Either the tablets were created from materials that came from unknown sources, or they represent geological processes that science doesn't currently understand. The chamber where the tablets were discovered shows construction techniques that don't match the architectural style of the monastery built above it. Foundation work that demonstrates understanding of structural engineering principles that weren't developed until much later. Ventilation systems that regulate temperature and humidity with precision that rivals modern climate control technology. Construction materials that show no signs of degradation despite centuries of exposure to environmental conditions. Electromagnetic readings around the tablets show consistent anomalies that can't be explained by known geological processes. Magnetic field variations that pulse in regular patterns. Electrical conductivity that changes based on atmospheric conditions. radio frequency emissions that interfere with communication equipment. The stone itself appears to interact with electromagnetic fields in ways that natural rock formations shouldn't. Research into the monastery's founding reveals that it was built specifically to protect something that was already there. Historical documents describe the original builders as following instructions left by previous inhabitants who had vanished centuries earlier. The monastery's location was chosen not for strategic or religious reasons, but to serve as a guardian facility for knowledge that was considered too important to lose. The tablets continue to reveal new details as analysis techniques improve. High-resolution scanning shows additional layers of information that weren't visible with earlier examination methods. Three-dimensional modeling reveals that the maps contain depth information encoded in the carving patterns. Spectral analysis indicates that different minerals were used to create markings that are only visible under specific lighting conditions. Each new discovery adds complexity rather than providing explanations. The maps become more accurate, the astronomical calculations more sophisticated, the geographical knowledge more comprehensive. What started as mysterious stone tablets have evolved into evidence of capabilities that challenge everything we believe about ancient human knowledge and technological development. The implications extend beyond cartography into fundamental questions about human history and development. If these maps represent genuine ancient knowledge, then entire civilizations possessed understanding that we're only now beginning to achieve. The precision, the scope, the sophistication of the information preserved in stone suggests that our ancestors, or their predecessors, had access to knowledge sources that aren't part of any historical record we recognize. Tonight we venture deeper into mysteries that refuse to conform to the timelines we've constructed for human civilization. Evidence that suggests knowledge was available in the ancient world that surpasses what we believe was possible. Maps that show a world different from the one we know, carved by hands that possessed understanding we're still trying to comprehend. The crystal skulls that sing when moonlight touches them, hidden away in private collections and museum storage rooms around the world, are artifacts that challenge everything we understand about ancient craftsmanship and technology. 13 crystal skulls carved from single pieces of quartz with a precision that modern jewelers struggle to match. No tool marks, no signs of the grinding or polishing that would be necessary to shape such hard material. Anatomically perfect representations of human skulls, complete with movable jaw pieces and internal structures that mirror actual bone formations. But these aren't just masterworks of ancient artistry. Under specific conditions, when certain wavelengths of light pass through them, they produce sounds, low-frequency vibrations that resonate through the crystal matrix. Harmonic tones that seem to respond to lunar cycles and atmospheric pressure changes. Some witnesses describe hearing what sounds like voices, though no recording equipment has ever captured these phenomena successfully. The skulls were discovered across different continents, in locations separated by thousands of miles and supposedly thousands of years. Yet they're identical in proportion, carved using techniques that appear to be the same, finished to specifications that match across all specimens. Either multiple ancient civilizations independently developed identical crystal working capabilities, or these artifacts share a common origin that isn't part of any known historical tradition. Geological analysis of the quartz reveals mineral signatures that don't match known crystal formations. The internal structure shows organizational patterns that occur naturally but would require millions of years of specific geological conditions to achieve. Yet the surface working demonstrates human craftsmanship applied to materials that shouldn't exist in nature. The crystals themselves appear to be artificially grown or modified at a molecular level using techniques that modern science can't replicate. When subjected to laboratory testing, the skulls exhibit properties that violate known physics principles. Electromagnetic fields that pulse in patterns too complex to be random. Light refraction that changes based on ambient temperature. Piezoelectric effects that generate electrical charges when pressure is applied, but only under specific atmospheric conditions. The crystals respond to external stimuli in ways that suggest they're more than decorative objects. Research teams studying the skulls report equipment malfunctions that occur consistently across different laboratories and testing facilities. Digital imaging systems produce photographs that show details not visible to direct observation. Spectral analysis equipment registers frequencies that aren't present when the same devices test ordinary quartz specimens. Computer modeling software crashes when attempting to map the internal crystal structure in 3 dimensions. The acoustic properties are particularly mysterious. Sound waves pass through the skulls, emerge with modifications that suggest the crystal structure is acting as a complex filter or processor. Frequencies are amplified, others are dampened, and some emerge as completely different tones than those originally introduced. The skulls appear to be designed to manipulate sound in specific ways, though for what purpose remains unknown. Carbon dating of organic materials found with the skulls produces results that span thousands of years, suggesting these artifacts have been passed down through multiple civilizations. Yet none of the cultures associated with their discovery left any records describing their creation or purpose. No tools capable of achieving such precision have been found at any of the sites. No evidence of the workshops or craftsmen who would have been necessary to create such sophisticated objects. The internal structure of the skulls reveals chambers and channels that serve no apparent decorative purpose. Hollow spaces connected by passages too narrow for any known tool to have carved. Air pockets that create resonance chambers when sound is introduced. Crystal formations that appear to focus and redirect light in predetermined patterns. The skulls were designed with internal functionality that suggests they served purposes beyond artistic representation. When multiple skulls are brought together, witnesses report phenomena that don't occur when individual skulls are studied in isolation. Synchronized vibrations that cause all specimens to resonate at matching frequencies. Light effects that create patterns when beams pass through multiple skulls simultaneously. Temperature variations that form geometric patterns in the surrounding air. The skulls appear to interact with each other in ways that suggest they were designed as components of a larger system. Local legends from indigenous peoples across different continents tell remarkably similar stories about crystal skulls, artifacts left by star people who possess knowledge of the crystal realm, objects that could store memories and replay them when activated properly, tools used by ancient shamans to communicate across vast distances or to access information from other dimensions. These oral traditions predate the scientific discovery of the skulls by centuries. The precision of the carving work defies explanation using known ancient technologies. Surface finishes that approach, optical quality, symmetry that remains perfect when measured with modern instruments. Internal details that demonstrate understanding of human anatomy at a level that wouldn't be achieved by medical science until much later in history. The skulls represent craftsmanship capabilities that shouldn't have existed when they were supposedly created. Attempts to replicate the skulls using modern crystal working techniques have been unsuccessful. Diamond cutting tools produce visible marks that don't appear on the originals. Laser etching creates heat patterns that would damage quartz in ways not seen on the ancient specimens. Computer-controlled machinery can't achieve the internal hollow structures without destroying the surrounding crystal matrix. Whatever methods were used to create these skulls aren't part of contemporary manufacturing capabilities. The optical properties of the skulls include light manipulation effects that suggest sophisticated understanding of crystal physics, beam focusing that creates concentrated light patterns, dispersion effects that separate white light into component colors with precision that rivals modern prisms, internal reflection patterns that create complex visual displays when light enters the skulls from specific angles. The skulls function as optical devices designed to work with natural light sources. Chemical analysis reveals trace elements within the crystal structure that don't occur naturally in quartz formations. Metallic inclusions arranged in patterns that suggest intentional placement rather than random mineral contamination. Molecular modifications that alter the physical properties of the base crystal material. The skulls appear to be composite materials rather than naturally occurring quartz, engineered at an atomic level using techniques that modern science is only beginning to understand. The electromagnetic signatures emitted by the skulls vary based on external conditions in ways that suggest responsive rather than passive behavior. Field strength changes that correlate with solar activity, frequency shifts that align with lunar phases, pulse patterns that modify when atmospheric pressure fluctuates. The skulls appear to be reacting to environmental conditions as if they're monitoring or measuring something in their surroundings. Underground chambers discovered near Skull find sites contain additional artifacts that share similar construction techniques and materials. Crystal formations that appear artificially modified. Stone structures that incorporate quartz elements with the same precision carving found in the skulls. Workshop areas that show evidence of crystal working on a scale that suggests industrial rather than individual craftsman production. The skulls represent just one component of larger technological systems. Research facilities that house the skulls report consistent environmental anomalies that occur only in areas where the artifacts are stored. Temperature fluctuations that follow no predictable pattern, humidity changes that affect only localized areas, air pressure variations that create drafts in sealed chambers. The skulls appear to influence their immediate environment in subtle but measurable ways. The few complete studies that have been conducted reveal information that's rarely discussed in public forums, documentation that's been classified or restricted from general access, research results that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient human capabilities. Findings that suggest the skulls represent technology rather than art designed for purposes that we don't yet understand or aren't ready to acknowledge. Each skull studied adds new questions rather than providing answers about their origin or purpose. The precision becomes more remarkable, the properties more unusual, the implications more significant. What began as mysterious artifacts have evolved into evidence of capabilities that existed in the ancient world but don't fit any known technological development timeline. The skulls continue to produce phenomena that resist scientific explanation, acoustic effects that vary based on lunar cycles, light patterns that appear only under specific atmospheric conditions, electromagnetic emissions that pulse in coordination with planetary alignments. These aren't random occurrences, but predictable responses that suggest the skulls were designed to interact with natural cycles and cosmic events. Tonight, we descend further into mysteries that challenge the very foundations of what we believe about human history and technological development. Evidence preserved in crystal that suggests our ancestors possessed knowledge that we're still struggling to comprehend, artifacts that demonstrate capabilities that shouldn't have existed, created by hands that understood principles we're only now beginning to discover. The machine found buried in solid rock dated to millions of years before humans existed. In a limestone quarry in Romania, workers extracting stone for construction projects made a discovery that would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about the timeline of technological development. Embedded in solid rock that geological analysis confirmed was over 20 million years old, they found a metallic object that resembled a modern tool or machine component. The object was completely enclosed within the limestone matrix, with no signs of recent insertion or contamination from modern sources. The rock formation showed continuous layering that indicated undisturbed geological processes spanning millions of years. Yet within this ancient stone lay something that appeared to be manufactured using techniques that shouldn't have existed until the industrial age. When extracted and cleaned, the object revealed precise geometric shapes that don't occur in natural mineral formations. Right angles, symmetrical curves, uniform thickness that suggests machining rather than natural formation. The metal itself proved to be an aluminum alloy with trace elements that don't match any known ancient metallurgy. Aluminum wasn't isolated as a pure metal until the 19th century, yet here was an aluminum object embedded in rock that predated human evolution by millions of years. The surface of the object shows tool marks that indicate it was shaped using cutting implements, parallel lines that suggest saw cuts, smooth areas that appear to have been filed or ground to specific tolerances, holes that were clearly drilled rather than formed naturally. The manufacturing evidence is unmistakable, yet it exists in geological context that makes such manufacturing impossible according to established scientific timelines. Laboratory analysis revealed additional anomalies that compound the mystery. The aluminum alloy contains isotope ratios that don't match terrestrial sources. The crystalline structure shows organization patterns that suggest the metal was processed under conditions that don't occur naturally on Earth. Chemical composition that indicates smelting techniques more advanced than those used in early aluminum production. The object represents metallurgy that surpasses even early industrial capabilities. Attempts to date the object using conventional methods have produced contradictory results. The limestone matrix consistently tests to over 20 million years old using multiple dating techniques. The metal object itself shows no signs of recent manufacture or contamination. Microscopic analysis reveals corrosion patterns that would require thousands of years to develop. Yet the precision of the manufacturing suggests technological capabilities that didn't exist in any known historical period. The shape of the object has sparked debate among researchers who've studied it. Some describe it as resembling a hammerhead or tool component. Others see similarities to mechanical parts used in modern machinery. The geometric precision and functional design suggest it served a specific purpose rather than being decorative or ceremonial. Whatever its intended use, it represents sophisticated engineering applied to advanced materials. Underground surveys of the quarry site have revealed additional anomalies in the surrounding rock formations, geometric patterns in mineral deposits that suggest artificial modification. Trace elements that don't occur naturally in the geological region, underground cavities that appear to have been formed by processes other than natural erosion. The object may be part of a larger complex buried within the limestone deposits. The discovery was initially reported in geological journals, but was quickly dismissed by mainstream science as impossible. The timeline implications were too disruptive to established understanding of technological development. Rather than investigating further, the scientific community chose to ignore findings that didn't fit accepted models of human evolution and technological progress. Similar objects have been reported from other geological sites around the world, but have received little scientific attention. Metallic artifacts embedded in coal seams that predate known metallurgy by millions of years. Manufactured objects found in rock formations that were supposedly formed before complex life existed on Earth. A pattern of technological artifacts appearing in geological contexts that make their existence impossible according to conventional science. The few researchers who have studied these anomalous objects report consistent patterns that suggest they're not random occurrences. Similar metallurgy techniques across different discoveries, comparable manufacturing precision that indicates standardized production methods, geometric designs that appear in multiple specimens despite being found in widely separated locations. The objects suggest organized technological activity rather than isolated incidents. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the same rock layers as the metallic objects produces dates that align with the geological evidence. Plant and animal remains that confirm the age of the limestone deposits. Fossil evidence that places the rock formation millions of years before humans evolved. Yet embedded within these ancient matrices are objects that clearly demonstrate technological sophistication. The implications extend far beyond archaeology into fundamental questions about the timeline of intelligence and technological development on Earth. If these objects represent genuine ancient technology, then sophisticated manufacturing capabilities existed millions of years before humans appeared. Either the dating methods are fundamentally flawed, or technological civilization has existed on Earth far longer than anyone imagined. Research facilities that have studied these objects report equipment malfunctions that occur consistently when analyzing the metallic artifacts, spectral analysis systems that produce readings that don't match known material properties, computer modeling software that crashes when attempting to process the geometric data. metallurgical testing equipment that registers results that contradict established material science principles. The objects resist conventional analysis techniques in ways that suggest their material properties differ from normal metals. Hardness testing that produces inconsistent results, chemical analysis that reveals composition changes when samples are taken from different areas of the same object, electromagnetic properties that vary based on environmental conditions. The objects appear to be composed of materials that don't behave according to known physics principles. Local legends from the regions where these objects have been found describe artifacts left by sky people who visited Earth in ancient times, stories that speak of metal objects that fell from the heavens and became buried in the earth, oral traditions that describe beings who possessed knowledge of metalworking that surpassed human understanding. These legends were dismissed as mythology until objects matching their descriptions began appearing in geological contexts that predate human civilization. The manufacturing techniques evident in these objects include processes that weren't developed until modern industrial periods, precision machining that requires computer-controlled equipment, alloy composition that demands sophisticated metallurgical knowledge, surface treatments that involve chemical processes not discovered until recent centuries. Yet these techniques were apparently applied to create objects that are millions of years old. Attempts to replicate the objects using period-appropriate technology have been unsuccessful. Ancient smelting techniques can't achieve the alloy composition found in the artifacts. Primitive tools can't produce the geometric precision evident in the manufactured components. Even modern equipment struggles to match some of the surface treatments and material properties. The objects represent technological capabilities that don't fit any known development timeline. The electromagnetic signatures of these objects show patterns that suggest they served functional rather than decorative purposes. Field emissions that vary in response to external stimuli. Conductivity properties that change based on temperature and atmospheric conditions. Magnetic characteristics that indicate the objects were designed to interact with electromagnetic fields. They appear to be components of technological systems rather than artistic artifacts. Underground exploration around discovery sites has revealed evidence of larger technological installations buried beneath the surface. Geometric structures in rock formations that suggest artificial modification. Mineral deposits arranged in patterns that don't occur naturally. Electromagnetic anomalies that indicate the presence of metallic objects or installations hidden within the geological matrix. The individual objects may represent fragments of much larger technological complexes. Research into the geological conditions required to embed objects within solid rock reveals that the process would require millions of years of gradual mineral deposition. The limestone formed slowly through natural processes that would have encased any objects present during formation. For manufactured items to be embedded within these matrices, they would have had to be present when the rock formation began, placing their creation millions of years before known technological development. The objects continue to challenge fundamental assumptions about technological development and the timeline of intelligent life on Earth. Each new discovery adds complexity rather than providing explanations. The precision becomes more remarkable, the materials more sophisticated, the implications more significant. What began as anomalous geological finds have evolved into evidence that technological civilization may have existed on Earth far longer than anyone imagined. Tonight, we continue our journey through mysteries that refuse to conform to established scientific understanding. Evidence preserved in stone that suggests intelligence and technology existed millions of years before humans appeared on Earth. Artifacts that demonstrate capabilities that challenge everything we believe about the development of civilization and the timeline of technological advancement. The underwater city that shouldn't exist beneath the waves of the Caribbean. In the crystal clear waters off the coast of Cuba, where the ocean floor drops away into abyssal depths, sonar equipment has detected something that challenges everything we understand about ancient civilizations and sea level changes. Massive stone structures arranged in geometric patterns, stretching across an area larger than Manhattan, sitting on the ocean floor at depths that should have been dry land only during the last ice age. The discovery was made accidentally during routine mapping of underwater terrain for oil exploration. Sonar readings showed regular geometric patterns that didn't match natural rock formations, straight lines intersecting at perfect right angles, circular structures with uniform diameters, stepped formations that resembled pyramid complexes, all sitting beneath over 2,000 feet of water, at depths that would require the structures to be over 12,000 years old to have been built on dry land. Underwater exploration using remotely operated vehicles revealed construction details that shouldn't be possible for any known ancient civilization. Massive stone blocks fitted together with precision joints, carved surfaces with symbols that don't match any known writing system, architectural features that suggest sophisticated urban planning, streets laid out in grid patterns, what appears to be a central plaza surrounded by larger structures. The complexity rivals any ancient city ever discovered on land. The stone blocks themselves present multiple mysteries. Some weigh hundreds of tons, yet they're arranged with precision that would challenge modern construction equipment. The cutting techniques show no tool marks, suggesting methods that don't match any known ancient stoneworking. Surface analysis reveals treatment processes that prevent marine growth and corrosion in ways that modern engineering struggles to replicate underwater. The structures have survived millennia beneath the ocean in pristine condition. Carbon dating of organic materials trapped within the stone joints produces dates that place construction during the last glacial maximum when sea levels were dramatically lower than today. But this timing presents impossible challenges for conventional archaeology. No known civilization possessed the organizational capabilities or technological sophistication to build such massive urban complexes during that time period. The structures suggest population densities and social organization that supposedly didn't exist until thousands of years later. The site shows evidence of deliberate planning on a scale that exceeds most modern cities. Water management systems that channel ocean currents in specific directions, acoustic properties that amplify sound waves in predetermined patterns, astronomical alignments that track celestial movements with mathematical precision. The builders understood principles of hydroengineering, acoustics, and astronomy that weren't formally developed until much later in human history. Geological analysis of the surrounding ocean floor reveals anomalies that suggest the area wasn't submerged gradually through natural sea level rise. Sediment patterns that indicate rapid submersion rather than gradual flooding, mineral deposits that suggest massive geological upheaval in the region, evidence of sudden catastrophic changes that would have inundated the entire complex in a relatively short time period. The city appears to have been abandoned and flooded suddenly rather than gradually evacuated as waters rose. The architectural style doesn't match any known ancient civilization from the Americas or anywhere else in the world. Construction techniques that appear unique to this site, decorative elements that don't correspond to any established cultural tradition, symbolic systems that show no relationship to known writing or artistic styles. Either this represents a completely unknown civilization or it demonstrates cultural exchange between ancient peoples on a scale that isn't part of any historical record. Marine life in the area shows unusual behavioral patterns that marine biologists can't explain. Fish species that normally inhabit different depth zones congregating around the structures. Migration patterns that deviate from established routes to pass through the site. Acoustic anomalies that suggest the structures affect underwater sound transmission in ways that influence marine animal behavior. The city continues to interact with its environment thousands of years after its abandonment. Electromagnetic surveys reveal additional structures buried beneath sediment that accumulated over millennia, underground complexes that extend far below the visible surface ruins, tunnels that connect different areas of the city through subterranean networks, chambers that appear to have been sealed before the site was flooded. The visible structures represent only a fraction of what lies beneath the ocean floor. Attempts to conduct comprehensive archaeological surveys have been hampered by technical difficulties that occur consistently at the site. Underwater equipment that functions perfectly elsewhere experiences systematic failures when used around the structures. Navigation systems that lose accuracy in ways that make precise mapping difficult. Communication equipment that experiences interference that prevents reliable contact with surface support vessels. The construction materials include stone types that don't occur naturally in the Caribbean region. Geological analysis reveals mineral compositions that match quarries located thousands of miles away. Transportation of such massive building materials across such distances would have required maritime capabilities that supposedly didn't exist when the structures were built. The logistics of construction suggest organizational and technological capabilities that don't fit established timelines for ancient civilizations. Water current patterns around the site show modifications that suggest the structures were designed to interact with ocean flow dynamics. Channels carved into the ocean floor that direct currents in specific directions, architectural features that create predictable water movement patterns, acoustic chambers that amplify underwater sound transmission. The city appears to have been engineered to work with marine environment rather than simply being built on land that was later flooded. The few detailed studies that have been conducted reveal information that's rarely discussed in mainstream archaeological publications. Documentation that's been restricted from general academic access. Research results that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient maritime capabilities and urban development. Findings that suggest the structures represent technological and organizational sophistication that predates known civilization development by thousands of years. Local maritime traditions among Caribbean island cultures include legends that describe sunken cities inhabited by advanced peoples who possessed knowledge of underwater construction. Stories that speak of builders who could work stone beneath the waves and create structures that would last forever underwater. Oral histories that describe the Great Sinking when the ocean swallowed entire civilizations. These traditions were dismissed as mythology until underwater structures matching their descriptions began appearing in sonar surveys. The preservation state of the structures defies explanation considering their age and underwater environment. Stone surfaces that show no signs of erosion despite millennia of exposure to salt water and ocean currents. Mortar joints that remain intact without degradation, carved details that retain crisp definition in conditions that should have worn them smooth. The builders used construction techniques and materials that resist marine deterioration in ways that modern underwater construction struggles to achieve. Comparative analysis with other underwater archaeological sites reveals that the Cuban structures are unique in scale, sophistication, and preservation. Other submerged ruins show clear signs of being land-based settlements that were flooded as sea levels rose. The Cuban site appears to have been designed for underwater conditions from the beginning, architectural features that only make sense in a marine environment. Construction techniques that account for water pressure and current flow in ways that suggest the builders understood underwater engineering principles. The site continues to reveal new structures as improved underwater survey technology becomes available. Sonar mapping shows geometric patterns extending far beyond the initially discovered area. Structures that follow consistent architectural principles across vast underwater territories. Evidence of urban planning on a scale that rivals modern metropolitan areas. Each new survey reveals additional complexity rather than providing explanations for what has already been discovered. Research teams that have studied the site report consistent anomalies that occur only when working around the underwater structures. Equipment readings that don't match standard underwater conditions. Atmospheric pressure variations that affect diving operations in unpredictable ways. Water temperature fluctuations that create localized currents around specific architectural features. The structures appear to influence their immediate underwater environment in subtle but measurable ways. The implications extend beyond archaeology into fundamental questions about human development and the history of technological civilization. If these structures represent genuine ancient construction, then sophisticated urban planning and engineering capabilities existed thousands of years before they appear in the archaeological record. The complexity and scale suggest population densities and social organization that challenge everything we believe about ancient human societies. Tonight, we dive deeper into mysteries that lie hidden beneath the waves, preserved in underwater silence that has protected secrets for millennia. Evidence of capabilities that shouldn't have existed, created by civilizations that aren't part of any known historical tradition. Structures that demonstrate understanding of principles we're still discovering, built by hands that possessed knowledge we're only beginning to comprehend. The temple that phases in and out of reality in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Deep within the unexplored regions of the Brazilian Amazon, where satellite imagery shows only endless green canopy and indigenous tribes report areas that outsiders should never enter, expeditions have documented something that challenges our understanding of physical reality itself. A stone temple that appears solid and substantial during certain atmospheric conditions, but becomes translucent, almost ghostly, when environmental factors change. The structure was first reported by a geological survey team using ground-penetrating radar to map mineral deposits. Their equipment detected a large stone formation with geometric regularity that indicated artificial construction. But when they reached the coordinates, they found only jungle. No clearing, no ruins, no evidence of any structure. Their instruments insisted something massive was there, but their eyes saw nothing except trees and undergrowth. 3 days later, during a sudden atmospheric pressure drop that preceded a tropical storm, the temple appeared, not gradually materializing like a mirage, but suddenly becoming visible as if a curtain had been pulled away. Massive stone blocks arranged in stepped pyramid formation, carved surfaces covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly, architectural details that appeared solid enough to touch, yet seemed somehow not entirely present in normal space. The phenomenon follows predictable patterns that researchers have documented over multiple expeditions. The temple becomes visible during specific atmospheric conditions. Low barometric pressure combined with high humidity and electrical activity in the atmosphere. Temperature inversions that create unusual light refraction. Electromagnetic field fluctuations that affect sensitive equipment in consistent ways. The structure appears to exist in a state that responds to environmental variables in ways that physics can't explain. When visible, the temple demonstrates construction techniques that don't match any known Amazon culture. Stone blocks that weigh several tons each, transported through terrain where moving such massive objects would be impossible without modern equipment. Carving precision that rivals work found at major archaeological sites in other parts of the world. Architectural sophistication that suggests advanced mathematical and engineering knowledge. The builders possessed capabilities that don't fit the technological timeline for indigenous Amazon civilizations. The stone itself presents multiple anomalies that compound the mystery of the temple's intermittent visibility. Mineral composition that doesn't match geological formations in the region, crystalline structures that show artificial modification at the molecular level. Electromagnetic properties that change based on atmospheric conditions. The stone appears to be engineered to interact with environmental factors in ways that affect its visibility and apparent solidity. Indigenous peoples from tribes located hundreds of miles away have oral traditions that describe the ghost temple with remarkable accuracy. Stories that speak of spirits who built a house between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Legends that describe shamans who could enter the spirit house during certain ceremonies when the sky spirits opened the doorway. These traditions include technical details about the temple's appearance and behavior that prove impossible to know without direct observation. Carbon dating of organic materials found at the site produces contradictory results that mirror the temple's dual nature. Plant matter that appears fresh tests as being hundreds of years old. Soil samples that show layering patterns, indicating the site has been undisturbed for centuries, yet footprints and tool marks appear fresh when the temple is visible. Time itself seems to behave differently in the area around the structure. The interior of the temple, accessible only when the structure is in its visible phase, contains chambers that demonstrate impossible architectural features, rooms that appear larger inside than the external dimensions should allow, corridors that seem to extend beyond the physical boundaries of the structure, acoustic properties that create sound effects that don't match the apparent size and shape of the spaces. The temple's internal geometry doesn't conform to normal three-dimensional space. Research equipment brought to the site during the temple's visible phases experiences systematic malfunctions that follow predictable patterns. Digital cameras produce images that show details not visible to direct observation. GPS devices register coordinates that place the temple in different locations depending on when readings are taken. Electromagnetic field detectors register signatures that suggest the presence of technology that doesn't appear anywhere else in the Amazon region. The symbols carved into the temple walls appear to change based on viewing angle and lighting conditions. Characters that look like one thing from the front appear completely different when viewed from the side. Geometric patterns that seem static in photographs show movement when observed directly. Text that appears to be written in an unknown language but suggests meaning that changes depending on how it's interpreted. The carvings seem designed to convey multiple layers of information simultaneously. Underground surveys conducted when the temple is visible reveal additional structures that extend far below the surface, chambers that connect to underground tunnel systems, artificial cavities that show evidence of sophisticated excavation techniques, subterranean architecture that suggests the visible temple is only the upper portion of a much larger complex. The underground areas remain accessible even when the surface structure phases out of visibility. Atmospheric monitoring around the site shows consistent anomalies that occur regardless of whether the temple is visible. Electromagnetic field fluctuations that follow regular patterns, temperature variations that create localized microclimates, air pressure changes that don't correspond to regional weather patterns. The temple appears to influence its environment continuously, even when it's not visible to human observation. The few scientific papers that have attempted to document the temple phenomenon have been met with skepticism from the academic community. The implications are too disruptive to accepted understanding of physics and reality. Rather than investigating further, mainstream science has chosen to dismiss reports that challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of matter and visibility. The temple exists in a space between acceptance and denial. Attempts to maintain continuous observation of the site have been unsuccessful due to practical and technical challenges. Equipment left to monitor the area experiences failures that prevent long-term data collection. Personnel stationed at the site report psychological effects that make extended observation difficult. The jungle itself seems to resist permanent human presence in ways that force researchers to limit their time at the location. Local environmental conditions around the temple site show modifications that don't occur naturally in rainforest ecosystems. Plant growth patterns that create geometric shapes when viewed from above. Animal behavior that avoids certain areas during specific atmospheric conditions. Soil composition that varies in ways that suggest artificial modification. The temple appears to exist within an ecosystem that has been engineered to support its unusual properties. The construction materials used in the temple include elements that don't occur naturally in the Amazon basin. Stone types that match geological formations located thousands of miles away. Mineral inclusions that suggest the building materials were processed using techniques that don't appear in any known ancient technology. Chemical analysis reveals treatment processes that alter the fundamental properties of the stone in ways that modern materials science struggles to understand. Comparative studies with other sites around the world have revealed similar phenomena reported from different cultural contexts. Structures that appear and disappear based on environmental conditions. Buildings that seem to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. Archaeological sites that demonstrate properties that challenge conventional understanding of matter and visibility. The temple represents one example of a global pattern of anomalous architecture. The temple's behavior suggests it was designed with sophisticated understanding of atmospheric physics and electromagnetic field dynamics. Construction techniques that account for environmental variables in ways that affect the structure's visibility. Architectural features that respond to specific atmospheric conditions in predictable ways. Engineering principles that manipulate the interaction between matter and electromagnetic fields to create controlled visibility effects. Research into the site continues, despite official discouragement and funding limitations. Independent teams document the temple's appearances and attempt to understand the mechanisms that control its visibility. Each expedition reveals additional complexity rather than providing explanations for the phenomena already observed. The temple becomes more mysterious rather than less so as investigation techniques improve. The implications extend beyond archaeology into fundamental questions about the nature of reality and the limitations of human perception. If the temple represents genuine manipulation of visibility and matter state, then ancient builders possessed understanding of physics principles that modern science is only beginning to explore. The structure suggests that the boundaries between visible and invisible, solid and ethereal, may be more fluid than we assume. Tonight, we venture deeper into realms where the impossible becomes visible, where ancient knowledge challenges our understanding of what can exist in the physical world. Evidence that suggests reality itself is more malleable than we believe, shaped by builders who understood principles that allow matter to exist in states that we're only beginning to imagine. The stone that defies gravity found floating in a sealed chamber beneath the pyramids of Giza, in the restricted tunnels that honeycomb the bedrock beneath the most famous monuments on Earth. A discovery was made that has been carefully hidden from public knowledge for decades. A chamber sealed since ancient times, containing what appears to be a perfectly ordinary limestone block that hovers 18 inches above the floor with no visible means of support. The chamber was discovered during classified excavations in the 1970s, part of a systematic exploration of underground passages that official records claim don't exist. The room itself shows no signs of having been opened since it was sealed thousands of years ago. Air samples confirmed the space had been isolated from external atmosphere for millennia. Yet within this ancient tomb lies an object that violates fundamental laws of physics. The floating stone appears identical to limestone blocks used throughout the pyramid complex. Same mineral composition, same geological origin, same tool marks indicating it was quarried and shaped using methods consistent with ancient Egyptian stoneworking. But unlike every other block in the pyramids, this one refuses to acknowledge the existence of gravity. It maintains its position in space without any detectable energy source or support mechanism. Electromagnetic field measurements around the floating stone show anomalies that suggest the presence of forces that don't correspond to any known physics principles. Field lines that curve in impossible directions. Magnetic signatures that pulse in patterns too complex to be natural. Gravitational readings that indicate the stone exists in a localized area where normal gravitational effects don't apply. The space around the object appears to operate under different physical laws. Attempts to move the stone have produced results that compound the mystery. Physical contact causes the object to maintain its relative position while allowing the chamber itself to shift around it. The stone remains stationary in space while the earth rotates beneath it, suggesting it's anchored to something beyond terrestrial reference frames. Gentle pressure causes it to move slowly, but it returns to its original position when force is removed, as if tethered to specific coordinates in space. The chamber walls contain hieroglyphic inscriptions that don't appear in any known Egyptian texts, symbols that reference concepts that don't exist in conventional Egyptian religious or scientific traditions, mathematical notations that describe geometric relationships in ways that suggest advanced understanding of physics principles. The inscriptions appear to be technical documentation for the floating stone, written in a dialect that predates known Egyptian writing systems. Carbon dating of organic materials sealed within the chamber confirms the space has remained closed since the pyramid construction period. Plant fibers used in the sealing process test consistently with established timelines for pyramid building. Atmospheric analysis shows air composition that matches ancient environmental conditions. The chamber and its contents are genuinely ancient, not modern insertions designed to create false mysteries. The stone itself shows no signs of artificial modification beyond normal quarrying and shaping. No unusual materials embedded within the limestone, no electromagnetic devices hidden inside the block, no mechanical supports concealed within the chamber. The levitation appears to result from properties inherent in the stone itself or from modifications made using techniques that leave no detectable traces. Underground surveys reveal that the floating stone chamber is connected to a network of passages that extend far beyond the known pyramid tunnel systems. Geometric patterns in the underground architecture that suggest the pyramids were built over a much larger subterranean complex. Chambers that show evidence of advanced engineering techniques applied to projects that dwarf the surface monuments. The floating stone may be one component of a technological system that extends throughout the underground network. Research teams that have studied the phenomenon report equipment failures that occur consistently when sophisticated instruments are brought near the floating stone. Digital devices that function normally elsewhere experience systematic malfunctions in the chamber. Measurement equipment that produces readings that don't correspond to known physics principles. Computer systems that crash when attempting to process data collected around the levitating object. The few scientists who have been granted access to study the stone describe experiences that challenge their understanding of physical reality. Sensations of weightlessness when standing near the object. Visual distortions that make normal spatial relationships difficult to judge. Time perception, changes that cause minutes to feel like hours, or hours to pass in what seems like minutes. The stone appears to influence not just gravity, but the entire structure of space and time in its immediate vicinity. Comparative analysis with other anomalous objects found in pyramid complexes reveals that the floating stone is not unique. Similar phenomena reported from restricted areas beneath other pyramids in Egypt. Levitating objects discovered in sealed chambers throughout the Giza complex. A pattern of gravitational anomalies that suggests the pyramid builders possessed understanding of forces that modern physics is only beginning to explore. Local legends among Egyptian communities include stories that describe stones that could fly, used by ancient builders to construct monuments that would last forever. Oral traditions that speak of master builders who understood the secret of making stone lighter than air. These stories were dismissed as folklore until actual levitating objects began appearing in archaeological contexts that matched the legendary descriptions with remarkable accuracy. The chamber's environmental conditions show modifications that don't occur naturally in underground Egyptian sites. Humidity levels that remain constant despite seasonal variations that affect all other underground areas in the region. Temperature stability that suggests artificial climate control systems, air circulation patterns that indicate ventilation technology that maintains optimal conditions for preserving the floating stone and its chamber. Attempts to document the phenomenon through photography and video recording have produced results that are difficult to interpret. Images that show the stone clearly floating, yet also suggest it's resting on the floor. Video footage that captures the levitation from some angles while showing normal stone placement from others. The documentation itself seems to resist clear interpretation, as if the phenomenon exists partially outside normal space-time. The engineering implications of controlled gravity manipulation extend far beyond archaeological curiosity. Technology that could selectively negate gravitational effects would revolutionize construction, transportation, and energy production. If ancient builders possessed such capabilities, then the pyramids themselves may represent just the visible portion of technological achievements that exceed our current understanding. The stone's behavior suggests it was created using principles that modern science doesn't recognize as possible. Localized gravitational field manipulation that affects only specific objects. Spatial anchoring that references coordinate systems beyond terrestrial frames. Matter modification that changes fundamental physical properties without altering chemical composition. The stone represents technology that operates according to physics principles we haven't discovered. Research into the site continues under conditions of extreme secrecy, with access limited to a small number of researchers who are bound by agreements that prevent public disclosure of their findings. The implications are considered too disruptive to established scientific understanding and social stability. The floating stone exists in a space between discovery and acknowledgement, too significant to ignore, yet too challenging to accept. The chamber remains sealed except for brief periods when authorized research is conducted. The stone continues to float, indifferent to human theories about what should be possible. It serves as a silent reminder that our understanding of physical reality may be far more limited than we assume, and that ancient builders may have possessed a knowledge that we're not yet ready to comprehend. Tonight, we continue our exploration of mysteries that challenge the very foundations of what we believe about physics, about ancient capabilities, and about the limits of what's possible in the physical world. Evidence preserved in stone that suggests our ancestors understood principles that we're still struggling to discover, locked away in chambers that guard secrets we may not be ready to understand. The building that rebuilds itself when no one is watching. In a remote valley in the Carpathian Mountains, where morning mist clings to ancient forests and shepherds speak in hushed tones of places their grandfathers warned them never to approach, stands a structure that defies everything we understand about decay and entropy. A medieval monastery that should have crumbled centuries ago instead maintains itself through processes that no engineer or architect has been able to explain. The monastery was abandoned in the 14th century during a plague outbreak that devastated the region. Historical records describe the last monks fleeing in terror, leaving behind not just their possessions, but warnings carved into stone that future visitors should stay away. For over 600 years, the building stood empty, exposed to harsh mountain weather, earthquakes, and the relentless passage of time that reduces even the mightiest structures to rubble. Yet when modern researchers first documented the site in detail during the 1960s, they found something impossible. The monastery was in perfect condition, not just well preserved, but pristine. Stone walls showed no weathering. Wooden beams displayed no rot or insect damage. Metal fixtures remained free of rust, despite centuries of exposure to mountain humidity. The building appeared to maintain itself through mechanisms that operated without human intervention. Time-lapse photography installed to monitor the site has captured phenomena that challenge basic assumptions about material decay. Cracks that appear in walls during thermal expansion cycles heal themselves overnight. Wooden structures that show stress damage in the evening appear perfect by morning. Stone blocks that shift during seismic activity return to their original positions without any visible restoration process. The building actively resists entropy in ways that violate fundamental laws of physics. The construction materials themselves exhibit properties that don't match samples of the same substances found elsewhere. Stone quarried from local sources shows normal weathering patterns when used in other buildings, yet displays supernatural durability when incorporated into the monastery structure. Wood from trees in the surrounding forest decays normally when cut and seasoned, but becomes virtually indestructible when used in the monastery's framework. The building appears to transform ordinary materials into something that transcends normal physical limitations. Carbon dating of building materials produces results that suggest ongoing regeneration at the molecular level. Organic components that should have degraded completely over centuries show cellular structures that appear actively maintained. Microscopic analysis reveals repair processes occurring at scales invisible to casual observation. The building doesn't just resist decay, it actively reverses it through mechanisms that operate continuously. Electromagnetic monitoring reveals field patterns around the monastery that don't occur naturally in mountain environments. Energy signatures that pulse in rhythms that correlate with lunar cycles and seasonal changes. Magnetic anomalies that suggest the presence of systems that generate power from unknown sources. The building appears to draw energy from environmental sources and use it to maintain structural integrity through processes that modern engineering can't replicate. Local legends describe the monastery as cursed, but the nature of that curse becomes clear when you understand what the building actually does. Stories speak of monks who discovered secrets that should have remained hidden, knowledge that transformed their home into something that exists partially outside normal time. Oral traditions describe the building as alive, watching, waiting for something that hasn't happened yet. Attempts to take samples of building materials for laboratory analysis have been unsuccessful in ways that suggest the structure actively protects itself. Tools that function normally elsewhere become brittle and break when used on monastery materials. Drill bits designed to penetrate stone shatter on contact with walls that appear to be ordinary limestone. Chemical solvents that should dissolve mortar have no effect on joints that hold the building together. The interior of the monastery contains chambers that show evidence of self-modification over time. Rooms that have changed size and shape compared to architectural drawings made decades earlier. Corridors that appear to reroute themselves to create new pathways through the building. Staircases that lead to destinations that don't match the external structure's geometry. The building seems to evolve its internal layout according to purposes that remain unknown. Research teams that have attempted to study the monastery report psychological effects that make extended observation difficult. Overwhelming sensations that they're being watched by the building itself. Dreams that feature architectural details they've never seen during waking hours. Compulsions to leave the site that become stronger the longer they remain. The building appears to influence human perception and behavior in ways that discourage detailed investigation. Environmental conditions around the monastery show modifications that extend beyond the structure itself. Vegetation that grows in geometric patterns radiating outward from the building's foundation. Soil composition that changes in concentric circles around the site. Weather patterns that create microclimates that protect the monastery from severe storms that affect the surrounding region. The building's influence extends into the landscape itself. The few comprehensive studies that have been conducted reveal architectural features that shouldn't exist in medieval construction. Structural engineering that accounts for seismic activity in ways that weren't understood until modern times. Ventilation systems that regulate internal temperature and humidity with precision that rivals contemporary climate control technology. The builders incorporated knowledge that predates its formal discovery by centuries. Comparative analysis with other self-maintaining structures reported from around the world reveals similar patterns of selective entropy resistance. Buildings that repair themselves through unknown mechanisms. Structures that adapt to environmental changes without human intervention. Architecture that appears to operate according to principles that extend beyond conventional physics. The monastery represents one example of a global phenomenon that challenges our understanding of what buildings can be. The restoration processes observed at the monastery operate according to schedules that correlate with astronomical events. Repair activity that intensifies during specific lunar phases. Structural modifications that occur during planetary alignments. Maintenance cycles that follow patterns based on celestial mechanics rather than wear patterns. The building appears to synchronize its self-repair with cosmic events. Attempts to introduce modern materials into the monastery structure have produced unexpected results. Contemporary building supplies that integrate seamlessly with ancient materials, adopting the same self-maintaining properties. Metal components that become immune to corrosion when incorporated into the building's framework. Synthetic materials that develop organic characteristics after installation. The building appears to transform anything that becomes part of its structure. The monastery's behavior suggests it was designed with understanding of principles that modern architecture doesn't recognize. Self-repairing materials that operate at the molecular level. Structural systems that adapt to changing conditions without losing integrity. Construction techniques that create buildings capable of independent maintenance across centuries. The builders possessed a knowledge that we're only beginning to glimpse through advanced materials science. Underground exploration has revealed that the monastery's self-maintaining properties extend beneath the surface, foundation systems that show evidence of continuous modification and improvement. Subterranean chambers that maintain optimal conditions without any detectable climate control systems. Underground networks that connect the monastery to other sites that demonstrate similar phenomena. The building may be part of a larger system of self-maintaining structures. The implications extend beyond architecture into fundamental questions about the nature of matter and the possibilities for creating materials that transcend normal physical limitations. If buildings can be designed to maintain themselves indefinitely, then our understanding of entropy and decay may be incomplete. The monastery demonstrates that the boundary between living and non-living matter may be more fluid than we assume. Research into the site continues despite official discouragement and practical difficulties that make investigation challenging. The building remains, repairing itself in silence, maintaining secrets that span centuries. It stands as the evidence that our ancestors may have understood principles that allow matter to exist in states that we're only beginning to imagine possible. The laboratory hidden beneath Antarctic ice that still has power after 1,000 years. Buried beneath layers of ice that formed over millennia in one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth, ground-penetrating radar has detected a structure that shouldn't exist. Not natural formation, not a research station abandoned by modern expeditions, but a facility that shows signs of active operation despite being encased in ice that accumulated over centuries of Antarctic weather. The discovery was made during routine ice surveys designed to track climate change effects on polar ice sheets. Radar equipment detected geometric patterns beneath the surface that indicated artificial construction. Electromagnetic signatures suggested the presence of active electrical systems. Thermal imaging revealed heat sources operating at depths where no known power generation should be possible. All evidence pointed to a functioning facility buried beneath ice that predates any known Antarctic exploration. Initial attempts to reach the structure through ice drilling encountered obstacles that prevented access. Equipment that functioned normally elsewhere experienced systematic failures when brought near the buried facility. Drill bits that should penetrate ice easily became ineffective at specific depths. Power systems that operated reliably in extreme cold conditions failed without explanation when positioned above the underground structure. Satellite thermal imaging reveals heat patterns that suggest the facility maintains internal temperatures suitable for human habitation despite being surrounded by ice at sub-zero temperatures. Energy signatures that indicate power generation on a scale that exceeds anything that could be achieved with portable equipment. The facility appears to operate advanced heating and power systems that function independently of any external energy source. The structure's layout, as revealed through remote sensing, demonstrates architectural sophistication that rivals modern research facilities. Multiple levels connected by what appear to be elevator systems. Chambers designed for specific functions based on their size and configuration. Laboratory spaces equipped with systems that generate electromagnetic signatures, consistent with advanced scientific equipment. The facility was designed for serious research purposes rather than basic shelter or storage. Carbon dating of ice layers above the structure indicates the facility has been buried for over 1,000 years. Atmospheric analysis of trapped air bubbles confirms the ice formed naturally through normal weather patterns rather than artificial accumulation. Geological surveys show no evidence of recent excavation or construction activity. The facility predates any known human presence in Antarctica by centuries. The power systems operating within the buried structure emit electromagnetic signatures that don't match any known energy generation technology. Field patterns that suggest the facility draws power from geothermal sources that shouldn't exist in the region. Electrical activity that maintains consistent output despite environmental conditions that would challenge modern power systems. The facility operates technology that exceeds contemporary capabilities for extreme environment power generation. Local legends among indigenous peoples from regions thousands of miles away include stories that describe ice cities built by ancient peoples who possessed a knowledge of working in frozen lands. Oral traditions that speak of builders who could create warm spaces beneath the ice and maintain them for generations. These stories were dismissed as impossible until facilities matching their descriptions began appearing in remote sensing surveys of polar regions. The few research teams that have attempted to study the site remotely report equipment malfunctions that occur consistently when sophisticated instruments are used to examine the buried structure. Radar systems that produce readings suggesting the facility is larger than initial surveys indicated. Communication equipment that receives signals apparently originating from within the ice-buried structure. Detection systems that register activity patterns consistent with ongoing operations. Atmospheric monitoring above the site shows anomalies that suggest the facility influences environmental conditions beyond its immediate vicinity. Temperature variations that create localized warming effects. Air pressure changes that don't correspond to regional weather patterns. Electromagnetic field fluctuations that affect navigation equipment used by aircraft passing over the area. The facility appears to project its influence through the ice into the surrounding environment. The construction materials detected through remote analysis include substances that don't occur naturally in Antarctic geology. Metal alloys that show electromagnetic signatures consistent with advanced metallurgy. Composite materials that demonstrate properties suggesting sophisticated materials science. Building components that appear designed specifically for extreme cold environment construction. The facility was built using technology that predates its formal development by centuries. Underground surveys reveal that the facility connects to tunnel systems that extend far beyond the main structure, passages that appear to link the buried laboratory to other installations hidden beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, network configurations that suggest the facility is part of a larger complex of underground installations. The visible structure may represent only one component of an extensive hidden infrastructure. Attempts to establish communication with the facility have produced results that suggest the presence of automated systems that continue to operate after centuries of isolation. Radio signals that appear to originate from within the buried structure. Electromagnetic pulses that follow patterns too regular to be natural phenomena. Communication protocols that use frequencies and modulation techniques that don't match any known technology. The facility's operational status suggests it was designed with understanding of long-term autonomous operation in extreme environments. Power systems that operate independently for extended periods. Environmental controls that maintain optimal conditions without external maintenance. Automated systems that continue functioning despite centuries of isolation. The builders possessed knowledge of creating self-sustaining installations that exceed modern capabilities. Research into similar facilities has revealed evidence of other installations buried beneath polar ice in both Arctic and Antarctic regions. Structures that demonstrate comparable technology and operational capabilities. Installations that appear to be part of a global network of hidden facilities. A pattern of advanced underground construction that suggests organized development of polar infrastructure by unknown builders. The implications extend beyond archaeology into questions about the history of technological development and the possibility that advanced civilizations established permanent installations in regions that we consider uninhabitable. If the facility represents genuine ancient construction, then sophisticated understanding of extreme environment engineering existed long before such knowledge appears in any historical record. The facility continues to operate in silence beneath the ice, maintaining systems that we don't understand using technology that we can't replicate. It serves as evidence that our understanding of what's possible in extreme environment construction may be far more limited than we assume, and that ancient builders may have possessed capabilities that we're still struggling to achieve. Tonight, we descend deeper into mysteries that lie hidden beneath ice and stone, preserved in silence that has protected secrets for centuries. Evidence of capabilities that challenge our understanding of what ancient peoples could achieve, locked away in installations that continue to operate according to principles we're only beginning to discover. The compass that points to places that don't exist on any map. Locked away in a private collection that few researchers have ever been permitted to examine, sits an instrument that challenges everything we understand about navigation and geography. A compass crafted from materials that don't match any known metallurgy, with a needle that refuses to point toward magnetic north. Instead, it indicates directions toward locations that appear on no contemporary map, yet lead to places that explorers have found to be remarkably significant. The compass was discovered in the ruins of a Venetian trading post that had been abandoned for over 3 centuries, found sealed within a waterproof container alongside charts that showed trade routes to lands that don't appear in any known geographical record. The instrument itself appears to be crafted from a metal alloy that shows no signs of corrosion despite centuries of exposure to maritime conditions. Its construction demonstrates precision that rivals modern navigational instruments. When tested by navigation experts, the compass consistently points toward coordinates that lead to locations where significant archaeological discoveries have subsequently been made. Remote islands where ancient structures have been found, desert regions where buried cities have been uncovered, mountain valleys where cave systems contain evidence of prehistoric habitation. The compass appears to identify places of archaeological significance rather than following magnetic fields. The needle itself exhibits properties that don't match any known magnetic materials. Response patterns that change based on lunar cycles and atmospheric conditions. Magnetic signatures that pulse in rhythms that correlate with celestial events. Electromagnetic characteristics that suggest the needle interacts with forces beyond terrestrial magnetism. The instrument appears to navigate using principles that extend beyond conventional physics. Historical research into the compass's origins reveals references in maritime logs that describe navigational instruments that could find lands that weren't marked on any chart. Stories of explorers who used mysterious compasses to discover islands rich with gold and precious stones, accounts of trading expeditions that relied on instruments that pointed toward profitable destinations rather than cardinal directions. These reports were dismissed as sailor folklore until actual artifacts matching their descriptions began appearing in archaeological contexts. The charts found with the compass show geographical features that don't match any known land masses, but correspond remarkably well to underwater topography in regions where sea levels were lower during past geological periods. Coastlines that match continental shelves, now submerged beneath hundreds of feet of water. River systems that align with underwater canyons, carved when those areas were above sea level. The charts may represent geographical knowledge from times when the world's geography was dramatically different. Laboratory analysis of the compass materials reveals composition anomalies that suggest advanced metallurgical knowledge, alloy components that require smelting temperatures higher than those achievable with historical technology, crystalline structures within the metal that appear artificially induced, chemical properties that indicate processing techniques not developed until modern industrial periods. The compass was created using methods that predate their formal discovery by centuries. Electromagnetic testing reveals that the compass generates its own magnetic field rather than simply responding to external magnetic forces. Field patterns that vary based on geographical location and time of year. Electromagnetic signatures that suggest the instrument draws power from unknown sources. The compass appears to operate as an active navigation system rather than a passive magnetic indicator. Attempts to replicate the compass using contemporary materials and techniques have been unsuccessful. Modern metallurgy cannot reproduce the alloy composition found in the original instrument. Precision machining struggles to match the tolerances evident in the compass construction. Magnetic materials that show similar field generation properties don't exist in current materials science. The compass represents manufacturing capabilities that exceed modern technical abilities. The few expeditions that have attempted to follow the compass directions have reported discoveries that validate its accuracy in unexpected ways. Archaeological sites located exactly where the compass indicated, geological formations that contain mineral deposits of significant value, underground water sources in desert regions where such resources shouldn't exist. The compass consistently leads to locations of practical and scientific importance. Research teams that have studied the compass report equipment malfunctions that occur when other navigational instruments are brought near the artifact. GPS devices that lose satellite signal accuracy, magnetic compasses that spin wildly without settling on any direction. Electronic navigation systems that display error messages when attempting to function in proximity to the mysterious compass. The instrument appears to interfere with conventional navigation technology. The compass needle shows wear patterns that suggest it has been used extensively over long periods, yet the instrument shows no signs of mechanical failure or degradation. Precision components that maintain accuracy despite centuries of operation, bearing systems that function smoothly without lubrication or maintenance. The compass was designed for long-term reliability under conditions that would destroy conventional instruments. Underground surveys conducted at locations indicated by the compass have revealed structures and installations that demonstrate advanced engineering capabilities, subterranean chambers carved with precision that rivals modern excavation techniques, tunnel systems that show evidence of sophisticated planning and construction, archaeological sites that contain artifacts suggesting technological knowledge that predates its formal development. The compass appears to identify locations where advanced ancient construction took place. Comparative analysis with other anomalous navigational instruments has revealed similar artifacts reported from different historical periods and geographical regions, compasses that point toward locations of geological significance. Navigation tools that lead to archaeological sites of unusual importance. Instruments that appear to operate according to principles that extend beyond conventional magnetism. The compass represents one example of a global pattern of advanced navigation technology. The astronomical alignments incorporated into the compass design suggest it was created with sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, markings that correspond to planetary positions during specific time periods, calibration systems that account for precession and other long-term astronomical cycles. Navigation references that require knowledge of Earth's position relative to stellar coordinates. The builders possessed astronomical knowledge that wasn't formally developed until much later in history. Local maritime traditions from Mediterranean cultures include legends that describe magic compasses used by ancient navigators to find lands beyond the known world, stories of instruments that could locate islands where treasures were hidden by peoples who possessed knowledge of secret places, oral histories that speak of navigation tools that pointed toward destinations chosen by the gods rather than by human planning. These traditions were dismissed as mythology until instruments matching their descriptions began appearing in archaeological contexts. The compass continues to function exactly as it did when first discovered, pointing steadily toward coordinates that lead to places of significance that we're still learning to understand. It serves as evidence that navigation technology may have existed in the ancient world that operated according to principles we don't recognize, designed to find places that matter rather than simply indicating direction. Tonight, we continue our journey through mysteries that challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities and the principles that govern how we find our way through the world. Evidence preserved in metal and stone that suggests our ancestors possessed knowledge of navigation that exceeded our own, tools that could locate significance itself rather than simply pointing toward magnetic poles.